All right, folks. Anyway, let's dive in. You guys can't delay the next segment forever. So, folks, we got to talk about Donald Trump. And I know you're not happy about it. I can hear the booing from here. But a lot of people, well, let me back up. I have been trying really hard not to talk about the things that Donald Trump says too much, and instead to focus on what he actually does. And this is one of these cases where we are going to have to talk about what he's actually doing and why he's doing it, right? So one of the things that Donald Trump just announced, a couple days ago, is that he wants to open the Guantanamo facility to increase U.S. capacity to detain migrants and immigrants or those detained by ICE by over 30,000. So this would largely be at the migrant detention facility at Guantanamo Bay, which is different from the Guantanamo Bay facilities that were used to my understanding, I could be wrong about this, is different from the facilities used to detain those arrested during the war on terror, right? So not quite the same facilities, but still not great that they're going to be detained that close to a, effectively a black site. And you might be asking, what's going on here? Is this simply just Donald Trump wants more places to put immigrants to make him look tough, etc.? And yes, both of those things are true, right? But the fact is, as is the case with a lot of the decisions that are coming out fast and furious right now, these are decisions that are largely rooted in demands that big business and the ultra wealthy of America have placed upon Donald Trump. This is him paying back the money donated to his campaign, right? So what do I mean by that? Well, one, the government is in talks to privatize some of their prison facilities by selling them or straight up giving them to various private prison companies, right? And, well, it's actually quite easy to fill up all of these facilities when you have such a nuanced ability to detect who is and is not a documented, migrant or citizen, as Donald Trump does have, as we all know. He has the keen mutant sense to be able to sense that out.
Open borders with people pouring in, some of whom, I won't get into it, but you can look at them and you can say, could be trouble, could be trouble. Open.
Dang, that's crazy. He can just look at someone and know what their bureaucratic status is. He's like a mentat from Dune. But really, what this all is, he wants to hide the migrants at a black site so people stop criticizing him? No. I mean, it will make it harder to report on that. That's true, but that's not why he's opening up the Guantanamo detention facility, okay? He has a longer game plan here. Or rather, the companies that supported him have a longer game plan that they've just handed to him, and he is doing that plan. Here's Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez basically laying out a lot of what I'm talking about here.
Mr. Speaker, I want the American people to know, with eyes wide open, what is inside this bill. Because we stand here just 2 days after President Trump gave unconditional pardons to violent criminals who attacked our nation's capital on January 6th. And these are the people who want you to believe, who want us to believe that they're trying to, quote unquote, keep criminals off the streets. When they are opening the floodgates. I want the American people to know what is in this bill. Because in the guise and in the wake of tragedy, we are seeing a fundamental erosion of our civil rights. In this bill, if a person is so much as accused of a crime, If someone wants to point a finger and accuse someone of shoplifting, they will be rounded up and put into a private detention camp and sent out for deportation without a day in court.
So what does that mean? Just to pause right here, what do you guys think that means? Because this is one of the things that is really scary about the bills and the policies that Republicans have been trying to put in place here over the last week. Yes, they can skip due process if they are accusing you of being an undocumented immigrant. But now we have stories of different ICE raids that have been carried out where actual U.S. citizens are also scooped up. U.S. veterans are being scooped up. And under this act, well, if they are simply accused of the crime, accused of being a non-citizen, it doesn't matter if they are or not, because they can just get brought to a private prison. I'm sorry, I'm getting ahead of myself. They can be brought to a private holding facility, or a holding facility. Those holding facilities are going to be privatized either now or in the near future. Yeah, we covered the story the other day about Navajo tribe members being detained. This affects basically everyone in this country who is either, like, non-white, or even white folks who happen to be around when ICE shows up in a large gathering of people who simply look non-white. So it is a scare tactic meant to discourage allies from organizing with undocumented folks or with marginalized folks of any type of documentation. It is designed to allow for large-scale scoops of people. And, well, let's see where Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez takes this from here.
Without a moment to assert their right and without a moment to assert the privilege of innocent until proven guilty. Without being found guilty of a crime, they will be rounded up. That is what is inside this bill, a fundamental suspension of a core American value. And that is why I rise to oppose it. If you're a dreamer, all someone has to do is point a finger and you will be rounded up. And we have seen moments like these happen before. In the Patriot Act, in the wake of the travesty of 9/11, a fundamental suspension of American civil liberties. That is what we are seeing here today. Mr. Speaker, you may wonder why so many of our friends across the aisle who care so deeply about the rule of law happen to be so desperate to pass this bill, after they are unleashing people who attacked police officers here on this Capitol into roaming our streets, who are publicly saying now they want to get a gun. Suddenly, these folks care about public safety? I don't think so. Look no further than the price tag of this bill, $83 billion. They know that it can't be paid for. They know that the capacity is not there. And you know what will be there? Private prison companies.
Bingo! This is, you might think like, oh, well, the cruelty is the point. And to an extent that is, it's always sort of true. But the cruelty isn't really the point. The cruelty, satisfies the base's most base desires. But what it's really being done for is not cruelty. It is being done for the benefit of big business. It is being done for the very capitalistic reason of wanting to exploit labor, of wanting to eke out a profit. The cruelty isn't the point here. The profit is the point. The fact that there are massive companies who operate and actively profit off of the imprisonment of human beings, and then the selling of the labor of those human beings to other private companies. for far, far, far below minimum wage rates for slave wages. That is the point.
Are going to get flooded with money, who give this money, no doubt. I want folks at home to look. Look at what members of Congress are invested in private prison companies who receive this kind of money, and look at the votes on this bill.
Also, I want you to really wrestle with this. Most people who are going to be arrested as undocumented immigrants in the United States are not going to be sent to Guantanamo Bay's migrant detention facility. That is a temporary measure. That is a temporary measure while, other things move and shake. Here's the Brennan Center for Justice commenting on Trump's reversal of the Biden executive order that ended the Department of Justice's contracts with private prisons. It was actually one of the few good things that Joe Biden did. That means the Department of Justice, the federal government, is now working on clearing the way to work with these private prisons to reopen the facilities that were closed after that executive order under Biden. That is what is going to serve as the majority of the capacity for holding undocumented people and anyone summarily arrested alongside them. Guantanamo, that's like an attention-grabbing headline. But what it is effectively almost doubling the federal capacity while these private corporations open up their old facilities again. Once they're open, those migrants that are in Guantanamo Bay, they're going to be moved to private facilities. If not, just outright privatizing the Guantanamo Bay facility. Let's let AOC finish her speech.
It is atrocious that people are lining their pockets with private prison profits in the name of a horrific tragedy and the victim of a crime. It is shameful. It is absolutely shameful. And Mr. Speaker, I'll conclude with this. In a few months, there are members of Congress who voted for this bill who are going to pretend they didn't know about all the bad things that are going to happen because of it. So when a private prison camp opens in your town, when a dreamer...
Time has expired. I yield the gentlelady an additional 30 seconds.
So when a private prison camp opens in your town and they say, we didn't know this was going to happen, know that they did, and they voted for it. When a dreamer is disappeared from your classroom, when the President of the United States destroys what is left of the Constitution as he's announced in this attack on birthright citizenship, they will all say, we didn't know this was coming. And I want the American people to know that they did. This vote represents it. And with that, I yield back. Thank you very much.
She's right. She's right. You know? And, like, the investments are already happening, guys. As soon as Donald Trump won, you can look at the stock price of every private prison company in America, and in a lot of cases, it almost doubled. It almost doubled the stock prices of some of these companies. I looked up Geo Group, one of the largest private prison companies in the United States. It jumped from like $13 to like $23, $24, if I recall. They knew exactly what was coming, and they have a list of demands, and Donald Trump is delivering on those demands for his donors. And you can see them maneuvering as well. Here is a press release from Geo Group dated December 16th, 2024. The Geo Group announces $70 million investment in expanding ICE services capabilities and new corporate reorganization. They are selling their older prisons, or their less, profitable prisons, in order to invest in larger facilities that they can use to detain undocumented immigrants. And you might ask, well, like what they're detaining undocumented immigrants. What do they get out of that? Well, guys, undocumented immigrants, they bring in a lot of money. Like a lot of money. Let me just pull this up here. I believe it was here. Yeah. One of the names that I kept encountering as I looked into this story was the South Texas Family Residential Center, which is located in Dilley, Texas, right? And it was shut down June 10th of 2024. And, well, it's now going to reopen under Donald Trump. Now, this facility houses around 2,400 people. In the past, it was used under Donald Trump to imprison, children, mothers, families. And you might ask, well, how much does it cost to actually do that? Well, fun fact for you, it costs around... Let me pull up the number here. Around $296 per person per day, according to ICE. Now, I'm but a simple country streamer, chat. But when I look up what $296 times 365, that is $108,000 in order to imprison one person in this facility for a year. And keep in mind, these people will be held indefinitely. For 1 year, costs $108,040 per year. If you have 3,000, which is the planned number of people for the facility, that amounts to $324,120,000 every year for this one facility. The amount of money that these private companies make off of this is astronomical. Okay? You could give someone half of that money to just live in an apartment and not, like, they'd be set. You know? But you know that they're not being kept in pristine, humane conditions. These private companies cut corners, and then they pocket the extra money. So, and then on top of that, they sell labor from these prison facilities to local businesses like McDonald's, like Fields, etc. So they make a lot of money in order to, imprison these people. A lot of money is at stake here. And, well, Geo Group is putting $70 million. And yeah, when you know it, they gave Trump millions of dollars. It's crazy. Here's another one. Shuttered private jail in Kansas could become immigration detention center. According to the Missouri Independent, the ACLU warns Core Civic's Leavenworth facility and others could play a role in President-elect Donald Trump's mass deportation plans. Yeah. CoreCivic Inc., the nation's largest private prison operator, responded in June to a request by U.S. ICE to help identify potential detention facilities in the Midwest and other regions, according to ACLU's documents. The company offered information on several of its facilities across the country. Among them was Midwest Regional Reception Center, which was previously operated as the Leavenworth Detention Center, a pretrial detention facility for detainees charged with, but not convicted of, federal crimes in Kansas, Nebraska, Iowa, and western Missouri. During its time as a pretrial detention facility, the Leavenworth Detention Center grappled with persistent violence. Micah Kubik, executive director of the ACLU of Kansas, said in a statement that an expanded ICE presence will deeply harm our fellow Kansans. The community of Leavenworth has made it clear multiple times that ICE and CoreCivic are not welcome to wreak the havoc of federal immigration enforcement here. And local and state leaders do not have to give in. And, of course, in a statement, Ryan Gustin, director of the public affairs for CoreCivic, said the company's immigration facilities operate with a significant amount of oversight and accountability and are monitored and audited by ICE officials. The services we provide help the government solve problems in ways it could not do alone, to manage unprecedented humanitarian crises, dramatically improve the standard of care for vulnerable people, and meet other critical needs efficiently and innovatively, Gustin said, presumably in that tone of voice. These problems are the American public has made clear they want fixed. So, yeah. Yeah. You cannot have mass deportations without significant expansion of ICE detention capacity in states across the country. And that's exactly what the incoming Trump administration is preparing to do. So what I really want you all to understand here, folks, is that primarily this reopening of Guantanamo is a delaying tactic. It is designed to buy time while these private prisons invest money into reopening facilities, hiring their staff, contracting out potential future labor, and also build entirely new facilities. You know, that's what's happening here. I don't understand how it can cost so much to imprison someone when surviving on the street is under $20K. Jennifer, it's because when you imprison someone, you are suddenly responsible for their health care. You need to maintain the security of the facility. You need to have numerous full-time staff to ensure people don't escape or people aren't fighting each other, or, you need cooks, you need all these things. And it is very costly to imprison a human being, to deprive them of their freedom. But the majority of that cost, if we're being completely and utterly honest, is the fact that these are private corporations grossly overcharging the federal government for their contracts. Fundamentally, that's also the big thing. So you've got two major reasons for pushing that price wildly up. Now, also keep in mind the ACLU has been making a lot of moves behind the scenes preparing for this, but they've been filing Freedom of Information Act litigation to disclose ICE proposals to expand immigration detention nationwide, because they need to find out where these facilities are going to be built, where they're going to be expanded, where they're going to be reopened. And so the ACLU has been very on the ball about filing these lawsuits. The new documents confirm that private prisons, prison corporations, Geo Group, CoreCivic, and Management and Training Corporation, as well as Target Hospitality, which provides temporary tent facilities, which, boy, that is a chilling thing to find in the middle of this. Like, oh, good, they're gonna build tent cities again in the middle of the desert. How great. Great. submitted proposals to requests for information to expand ICE's detention capabilities and facilities. The latest disclosures provide further details identifying the specific facilities in question. North Lake Correctional Facility in Baldwin, Michigan, owned and operated by Geo Group, Inc. This facility was previously used as a federal prison and closed in 2022. Rio Grande Processing Center in Laredo, Texas, owned and operated by Geo Group, Inc. Carrizo Springs, a tent facility previously used to detain immigrant minors in Carrizo Springs, Texas, owned and operated by Target Hospitality. And yeah, there are a number of other ones opening across the country as well. Target Hospitality, by the way, just as an FYI, made a bit of a name for itself by incidentally, by the way, Target Hospitality, one of the fastest growing companies in the United States at the moment. Just let that sink in for a bit. And their whole business model is building tent cities. Let that also sink in. But also, they apparently have something called the man camp controversy. And what that is basically whenever there's an oil boom around the country, Target Hospitality comes in and builds a temporary camp for workers to live in while the oil boom goes on. But the controversy is that the oversight at these camps and the security at these camps is terrible. So what ends up happening is belligerent, drunk men wind up fighting each other or going out and doing sex crimes, usually against indigenous people, because again, a lot of these camps tend to be in or around reservations in the United States. And yeah, it's pretty bad. And I cannot imagine that the oversight of, citizens who are not being imprisoned is going to be, worse than the oversight given to undocumented immigrants who are being imprisoned against their will. I imagine that undocumented immigrants are going to be suffering a lot worse in these types of facilities. What about the fact they're building a goddamn camp? Well, yes. The point I'm trying to make is that all of these are goddamn camps. The important part of a concentration camp is not the fact that it's a camp. It's the fact that it's a concentrated holding facility. When we're looking at all of these, they are concentration camps. When we're talking about putting 30,000 people into the migrant detention facility, that's a 30,000 people strong concentration camp. I didn't think I had to spell that out. So yeah, it's not great. Luckily, we have actual journalism happening at Vogue. Teen Vogue. ICE watch programs can protect immigrants in your neighborhood. Here's what to know. So, some interesting stuff here.
During the first Trump administration, we realized part of what our opponents wanted was to make us afraid. Sometimes a rumor about ICE detentions on WhatsApp would lead parents to keep their children home from school. So at first, we started verifying rumors. Siembra volunteers would show up to a reported ICE agent and find out what was going on, and we would report back via social media channels or sometimes by broadcasting a text message. After we started training people on how to identify ICE agents, we started getting more reports of suspected agents on stakeouts. And these went up dramatically during ICE operations when ICE agents would gather from multiple offices to attempt to make dozens of arrests. Because we had a bilingual hotline dispatch team and we had trusted volunteers in multiple counties, we could dispatch volunteers quickly at all hours of the day. And when these bigger operations would happen, we created a shift schedule to proactively post volunteers in areas where we knew ICE agents gathered in advance of the operations or in immigrant neighborhoods to look out for agents on stakeouts. We know of a few instances when ICE agents chose to abandon their stakeout when confronted by our volunteers. But the real victory was that the idea of ICE Watch went viral. In June 2019, when ICE conducted a number of detentions in central North Carolina, we shared photos of volunteers waiting for them early in the morning. And across the state, people started sending us photos of themselves on their own stakeouts in places like Laurinburg, far from established immigrant defense groups. That was the real victory. Not that we could stop every ICE arrest, but that people were willing to take risks to protect each other and not let our opponents scare us into giving up our way of life or our dignity.
Oh, God. Yeah, Teen Vogue has been based for a long time. So, yeah, a lot of this is, like, just good stuff. And I'm going to link this story here so you guys can peruse it on your own time. But do not think that just because the power arrayed against us is immense, do not think that you are powerless in return. When we work together, when we stand together, when we go out there and actually, make a stand for one another, we win. We're only powerless when we're isolated, scared, and divided. Exactly. And also, one of the things we have to remember is that when they're talking about DEI, they're talking about civil rights. They're talking about, they're talking about not just the civil rights of the people that they want to target, they're talking about your civil rights too. If the civil rights of others are conditional, so are yours. And they will, at some point, come for your rights as well. Now, One-Eyed Heathen, I linked the story in the chat, so you can check that out yourself. Why has the Democratic Party been capitulating to MAGA lately? Largely because and this is my assumption, I don't have any inside knowledge on this, but largely they are doing so because they are liberals, and their basic political assessment is essentially that we should just let Donald Trump hang himself because he's going to be incompetent, he's going to be unable to manage crises like the plane crash, for example. And they're just saying, all right, we'll just be quiet. We'll be unoffensive. We'll just let him, fail on his own merits or lack thereof. And that's stupid, of course. But that's also mainstream Democrat liberals for you. Yeah, they believe, because frankly, if they did speak up, that would genuinely require of them some frame of reference for how we got to this point that isn't just Donald Trump is an aberration. Like, they want to live in a world where Donald Trump is just this inexplicable freak accident, rather than we live in a world where, because of the forces of capital, Donald Trump is an inevitable outcome from our current system. And that without adopting radical pro-labor policies, we will succumb to someone like him again sooner or later. They are spineless, they are cowardly, and most of all, they are in the thrall of money. It really comes down to that. And their calculation at this point in time is, well, maybe if we just stay quiet, we can come out of these 4 years looking great. Come out of these 2 years looking great in the midterms. We'll win. We won't have to commit to any far left pro-labor policies. And then we can just continue as normal. Return to normalcy 2. And the issue with that is it's not going to work. The entire reason Donald Trump was able to take power in the first place is because of the Democrats' inability to embrace pro-labor policy. And so it's yeah. The only way to avert fascism is embracing solidarity with the working class. And frankly, they are not willing to do that yet. And maybe they never will be. Which is why, in particular, I advocate for us taking over our local Democratic parties. Fundamentally broken, I have not looked into indivisible.org. But I have been to several DSA meetings. I've been to several DSA meetings now. I'm getting my sea legs. And I've also gone to my local Democratic meetings. And let me tell you, as somebody who's now been in the room at those, it would be surprisingly easy if you got like a handful of especially if you're in a smaller city or town, if you got a handful of friends together and went to one of those meetings, you could literally wield the power of the Democrats in your area. You could co-opt the system for more radical political ends. How could pro-labor policy be politically unpopular amongst voters? That's the thing. Pro-labor policy is not politically unpopular amongst voters. The issue is Democrats don't want to embrace pro-labor policy because they don't want to endanger the donations that they get from their big business donors. That's the thing. The number one thing, if you talk to politicians candidly, the number one thing they hate doing, most of them in Washington hate doing, is calling and doing like phone banking and scrimping and scrambling for money for their political campaigns. It is hard to rely on grassroots donations. It's difficult. And so instead, if they can get all of the money they need from a campaign, from one person, one phone call, as opposed to thousands, a lot of them will opt for the one phone call. They are lazy. And if they lack a particular motivation to actually participate in that grassroots type of fundraising, then they are more inclined to big money. Why do people who are already rich never think they are rich enough? Because you have to understand, when they get rich, they start going to parties with other people who are rich. And it becomes basically a game. If I'm being completely honest with you, it becomes a game. They all care about who's at the top of the Forbes lists of wealthy people. They care about that. It just becomes a social game. That's it. Or it becomes it boils down to one of their weird pet projects. I'm going to use my money to build a company town in the middle of the Brazilian jungle. Something like that. And that all goes back to, we need to get money out of politics and get rid of Citizens United. Exactly, Polly has his cracker. We're fucked in a lot of different ways, so I just try and focus on the immediately actionable things, but ultimately, yeah, we need to get an amendment to get money out of politics. Yeah, they also at a certain level of wealth, they become more keenly aware of the fact that were things economically to go poorly for them, they could have an angry mob, demanding their head coming to their door. That's why they all have survival bunkers. Not doomering, just incomprehensibly livid. See, now you understand where I'm at. That's where my headspace has been lately. And just as one last thing to really hammer home what I mean when I say all of what they talk about when it comes to DEI and it is about civil rights and how that relates to detention within these private prisons. I think all you really need to see is this interaction between Will Stancil who I believe is pretty... Will Stansel is an insufferable lib, yeah? But in this case, guys, when Chris Rufo and Trump say, we're destroying DEI, we're salting the earth underneath it, and they're repealing regulations that reach back to 1965, they're not talking about corporate diversity trainings, they're talking about civil rights. And Christopher Rufo replies with the Giga Chad meme. They're coming for civil rights. They are coming for all of us, not just the undocumented. So we need to organize to fight today, which is why you guys, I would very much like to see you guys committing to show up for your local Democratic meetings and your local DSA meetings. I would very much appreciate if you guys showed up to your meetings, show up to any kind of meeting to get involved locally, politically, because we need to start doing that. It is not a question of like, oh man, I might not feel up for socializing that day. You know what? We need you to get over that. We need you to get over that. That is a luxury that we cannot afford. Banana Brains, thank you for stepping up and actually doing something as well. You became a dues-paying DSA member today. Congratulations. Let's fucking go. Because it's not enough, guys, to be righteously angry. It's not enough to have correct knowledge and opinions on what we should do. It is not enough. We do not have the luxury for that to be enough anymore. We need to actually do shit. We need to actually, beyond even just going to protests. Going to protests is really cool. It's fun. You get some of that aggression out. But we also need people to do the day-to-day bureaucratic work of building up a movement. And that requires going to meetings. It requires forming like cohesive structures that we can rely on when things get tough and when things get big. We need to do shit. And if you don't want to do it in DSA, you don't want to do it in like your local Democratic Party, find some organization that is effective at doing something in your local area, that is effective at actually standing up for civil rights and passing civil rights laws in your local area that protect people in your area. Because again, while I think communal action is very good and community education, very good, a lot of these threats, we need to be embedded in some of the bureaucratic infrastructure around us, because that is a surprisingly effective shield against the bureaucratic attacks of fascism in its early stages, which is what we're seeing right now. And yes, Dragonfly is 100% correct. Local Dems can be effective because most of them have office hours. You'll learn about that when you show up to these meetings. Okay, most of them have office hours. You can go visit them. You can actually set up meetings. But they are not inherently full of a spine. You need to impose a spine upon them. So please, do shit now before it's too late. Because these detention facilities that are opening up around the country, at some point they're going to want to put other people in them. And not just the undocumented. Also, we need to be looking out for all our brothers and sisters. Also, prime subbing to RBJ doesn't hurt. True. Thank you for the prime sub, Airbnb abortion.